Marcus Fletcher knew he was screwed the moment Ambassador Thax announced the day's agenda. Cultural Exchange Day. 3 innocent-sounding words that promised nothing but trouble for the lone human aboard the Harmonious Exchange, the pride of the Interstellar Coalition's diplomatic fleet. Today we shall deepen our mutual understanding through the sharing of formative childhood experiences, Thax announced, his 7-eye stalks pulsating with what passed for enthusiasm among the Exelborians. Marcus slouched deeper into his ergonomically incorrect chair. As the ship's maintenance technician, he didn't belong in this room full of ambassadors, cultural attaches, and diplomatic prodigies. But the Interstellar Coalition's inclusion mandate was clear. All sentient species aboard must be represented during cultural sensitivity training, regardless of rank or qualification. Being the only human on board meant Marcus got to be the reluctant flag-bearer for all of humanity. Lucky him. Each representative will share one defining memory from their developmental phase, Thax continued, his translucent skin flushing a gentle shade of pleased purple. This exercise will enlighten us all about the diverse paths to sentience that evolution has crafted across our magnificent galaxy. Marcus glanced around the semicircular classroom. 26 species, each more bizarre than the last, all staring at the curved holo display where Thax was projecting a list of participants. Fletcher Marcus Human, Soul 3, was dead last on the list. At least he'd have time to come up with something suitably non-traumatizing. Humanity had only joined the Coalition 3 standard years ago, and they were still very much the galactic new kids. Most species viewed humans as a quaint curiosity, endearingly primitive bipeds who had somehow fumbled their way into faster-than-light travel, despite their alarming tendency back toward emotional outbursts and their bewildering love of deliberately ingesting neurotoxins for fun. Coffee, alcohol, and hot sauce had all caused minor diplomatic incidents. Remember, Thax's melodious voice pulled Marcus back to the present. Choose a memory that illuminates the essence of your species' path to enlightenment. Great. Just great. Marcus mentally flipped through his childhood memories, finding nothing that would illuminate humanity's path to enlightenment, unless the Coalition was interested in the enlightening properties of setting action figures on fire with a magnifying glass. As the first participant floated to the presentation area, a gaseous Helodian whose name sounded like someone gargling mouthwash, Marcus realized this was going to be a very long crime. Indeed. Oh. The first 3 hours of Cultural Exchange Day confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The training room had gradually transformed into something resembling a cosmic meditation retreat as species after species shared memories of profound spiritual awakening, with harmonious community bonding, and transcendent connection to their homeworlds. The mellifluous Oribtal, a crystalline entity who communicated through light patterns, shared its memory of the first time it synchronized with its planet's magnetic field, a coming-of-age ritual that reportedly felt like becoming one with the universe itself. Marcus tried not to roll his eyes. He'd spent his coming-of-age years trying to beat unbeatable video games and avoiding homework. Next came Glick's tour of the Andromeda, a 12-limbed arachnoid who recounted how its brood of 64 siblings had collaborated to build a perfect replica of their star system, using only regurgitated mineral waste and collective telepathy. Marcus's most notable childhood construction project had been a baking soda volcano that had stained his mother's ceiling. Most illuminating, Thax commented after each presentation, his eye stalks quivering with approval. Occasionally he would glance at Marcus with what could only be described as preemptive disappointment. The Ulani twins, a pair of symbiotic plant-based intelligences, shared their memory of the first time they photosynthesized pure mathematics, whatever that meant. Their presentation included some kind of pollen release that made everyone in the room feel momentarily at peace with the universe. Everyone except Marcus, who was too busy panicking about his turn to feel cosmic harmony. By the time the 17th species had finished describing how they had achieved perfect communion with their ancestral spirits at the tender age of what would be equivalent to human toddlerhood, Marcus was sweating profusely. He had nothing. Nothing that wouldn't make these enlightened beings question how humans had managed to avoid extinction, much less achieve spaceflight. Next, Thax announced, we shall hear from Diplomat Kroon of the Tellurian Collective. A gelatinous mass of shimmering blue goo oozed to the front of the room. Croon reformed into a rough approximation of a biped, an apparent courtesy toward Marcus that he found more unsettling than flattering. My formative memory, Croon burbled through their speech orifice, occurred during my fourth mitosis. Our colony experienced simultaneous enlightenment while contemplating the fundamental mathematical constants of the universe. We achieved species-wide consensus on the nature of reality and our place within it. Several aliens made appreciative clicking sounds. Ambassador Krilthax's skin flushed a deep shade of impressed indigo. I was privileged to contribute the insight that consciousness itself is merely a wave function in the quantum field of possibility, Croon continued modestly. This revelation led to our species' great awakening and the development of our zero-point energy technology. Marcus bit his lip. His most significant childhood realization had been discovering that the cookie jar could be reached if he stacked enough books on a chair. As Croon oozed back to their seat, leaving a trail of enlightened mucus behind them, Marcus realized he was running out of time. He needed a memory, any memory that wouldn't make humanity sound like cosmic barbarians who had accidentally stumbled into space while trying to find new ways to deep-fry food. Krilthax consulted his list. We have time for one final presentation before the midday nutrition absorption period. All 7 of his eye stalks swiveled toward Marcus. Fletcher, Marcus of the humans, please share your species' formative experience. Marcus stood up on wobbly legs, his mind racing through increasingly inappropriate childhood memories. First day of school? Too mundane. Learning to ride a bike? Too pedestrian. The summer camp incident with the raccoons? Absolutely not. As he walked to the presentation area, Marcus decided that his cousin Trent's 8th birthday party was probably his least damaging option. At least no one had ended up in the hospital. Well, no one had been admitted. He reached the presenter's podium, cleared his throat, and made what would later be described in official coalition records as the worst diplomatic decision since the Proxima Centauri handshake incident. Hello, Marcus began, immediately regretting not having prepared anything. I'd like to share a memory from when I was approximately 8 standard Earth years old. It was my cousin Trent's birthday celebration. The room full of aliens leaned forward slightly, their various sensory organs focused intently on Marcus. Ambassador Krilthax's notepad hovered ready, his primary manipulator appendage poised to record humanity's profound developmental milestone. In our culture, birthday celebrations for young humans are, well, they're kind of a big deal, Marcus continued, finding his rhythm. They typically involve gathering children together, feeding them excessive amounts of sugar, and then just kind of seeing what happens. A puzzled murmur rippled through the audience. I should explain that sugar is a carbohydrate that the human body processes into energy, Marcus clarified. In young humans, it can produce a temporary state of heightened activity, a ritualistic consumption of energy molecules to achieve altered consciousness, inquired a Zenithian philosopher, 7 of their 9 eye ridges raised in interest. Similar to our vision quests? Not exactly, Marcus said. More like temporary insanity, really. Ambassador Krilthax's skin shifted to a concerned amber. Please continue, human Fletcher. Right. So Trent's parents had organized this party at their home, which was pretty standard. Balloons, streamers, cake, that's a sugar-based food item we traditionally serve at birthdays. But what made this particular celebration memorable was that Trent's father, my Uncle Dave, had decided to introduce some creative activities. The classroom's environmental sensors detected Marcus's increasing heart rate and helpfully dimmed the lights slightly, which only made the atmosphere more ominous. The first activity was innocent enough. Uncle Dave had filled small rubber sacks with water, we call them water balloons, and we engaged in ritualistic combat, attempting to break these water-filled projectiles on each other. Combat training for younglings? A militaristic Vrax I asked, suddenly interested. Practical. No, just for fun, Marcus explained. Anyway, that part went fine until Trent's little brother Kevin decided to fill his balloons with fruit juice instead. Have you ever tried to get grape juice out of white fur? The neighbor's cat hasn't trusted humans since. A Philesian diplomat made a distressed purring sound and shifted uncomfortably in their seat. After that, we moved on to the piñata, Marcus continued, now fully committed to his story. That's a hollow container filled with small candies, more sugar, which children take turns hitting with a stick while blindfolded until the container breaks open, and the treats fall out. A shocked silence fell over the room. You intentionally blindfold your young and encourage them to swing blunt objects? Ambassador Krill asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's more fun than it sounds, Marcus assured him. Though in this case, Uncle Dave had hung the piñata too close to the sliding glass door, which nobody realized until my turn came up. Several aliens began to make distressed sounds. The Logovian emissary, whose species had evolved without solid forms, actually started to melt slightly. I should note that safety glass is designed to break into small, less dangerous pieces, Marcus added quickly. In the emergency room, doctor said Kevin's stitches were some of the neatest he'd ever done. A Thulgarian fainted, their exoskeleton making a concerning crack as they hit the floor. Nobody moved to help them. But the real highlight of the party came after the cake, Marcus pressed on, now unable to stop himself. Uncle Dave had bought Trent a chemistry set for his birthday, and Trent immediately wanted to try it out. Unfortunately, he misinterpreted some of the instructions. Misinterpreted? Instructions for chemical manipulation? The Yulani twins' leaves were trembling. Yeah, he kind of combined the contents of all the vials at once, added some of the leftover cake frosting, and then decided to see what would happen if he put the mixture inside a model rocket. By now, at least a third of the class was displaying various signs of distress. The Zenithian philosopher had retracted 5 of their 7 eye stalks into protective sheaths. The Vrax Ion military attach was frantically taking notes. The rocket launch was actually pretty impressive, Marcus recalled with a nostalgic smile. It shot straight up, punched through the dining room ceiling, and then curved beautifully before coming down through the neighbor's skylight. Mrs. Abernathy's prize-winning orchid collection never really recovered. But the neighborhood fire department said the chemical reaction was unlike anything they'd seen in a residential setting, which Trent took as a compliment. The classroom's emergency ventilation system activated as several species began involuntarily releasing stress pheromones. The party pretty much wrapped up after the fire trucks left, Marcus concluded. Oh, except for the part where we discovered that Kevin had fed cake to the neighbor's dog, which turned out to be violently allergic to chocolate. Did you know that some Earth mammals can't process theobromine? The vet said she'd never seen a Great Dane move that fast before. Marcus looked up from his reminiscence to find a room full of stunned aliens staring at him in horror. Ambassador Krill had turned a shade of terrified gray that Marcus hadn't seen before. That's your formative memory? Krill finally managed to ask, his voice modulator struggling to maintain its usual melodious tone. Oh, that wasn't even one of the wild ones, Marcus said with a casual shrug. You should hear about my 13th birthday when Dad decided to teach me how to drive by. The emergency alarm cut him off mid-sentence. The diplomatic crisis unfolded faster than Marcus could say cultural misunderstanding. Half the class had to be escorted to the ship's psychological wellness center. The Logovian emissary had liquefied entirely and had to be collected in a specialized containment vessel. 3 Zenithians had formed an emergency meditation circle in the corner of the classroom, humming at frequencies that made the ship's windows vibrate. Ambassador Krill had immediately convened an emergency session of the ship's diplomatic council, which Marcus was now standing before, trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. Human Fletcher, Krill intoned gravely, do you understand the severity of what has occurred? Marcus shifted from one foot to the other. I shared a childhood memory as instructed. You described a sequence of events involving deliberate property destruction, casual endangerment of juvenile life forms, unnecessary animal suffering, the recreational misuse of chemical compounds, and the weaponization of confectionery products. Krill countered, each of his eye stalks vibrating with distress. Well, when you put it that way, Marcus mumbled. The Philesian delegation has formally requested trauma counseling, continued Krill. The Logovian representative may not resolidify for a standard week. The Zenithian philosopher has begun composing an 11,000-stanza lament titled The Horror of Human Childhood. Look, I'm sorry if my memory was a bit intense by your standards, Marcus said, trying to sound diplomatic. But honestly, by human standards, that was a pretty tame birthday party. Nobody ended up in a body cast, there were no police involved, and the house was still standing at the end. I'd call that a win. This statement only caused further consternation among the council members. The Coalition Diplomatic Corps is considering whether this constitutes an act of psychological warfare, said Krilthax. Some members have suggested that humans may be too volatile for full coalition membership. That's ridiculous, Marcus protested. We were just kids having fun. Your species' definition of fun seems to involve remarkably high levels of chaos, danger, and property damage, noted a Volparian counselor, their tail bristling with concern. The Vraxion military attaches requested additional information about your water balloon combat techniques and sugar-based enhanced performance supplements, but added Krilthax with obvious disapproval. We have denied this request pending further review. Marcus sighed. Look, I get that our childhood experiences might seem a little unstructured compared to yours, but that's just how humans learn. We explore, we make mistakes, we occasionally set things on fire accidentally, most of the time, and we grow from these experiences. The council members exchanged troubled glances, their various appendages gesturing in what Marcus had come to recognize as the universal sign for what do we do with this potentially dangerous lunatic. Just as Marcus was calculating his odds of reaching the escape pods before security caught him, an unexpected voice broke the tense silence. If I may address the council? The voice was ancient and creaky, like old tree branches rubbing together in the wind. All eyes, stalks, and sensory organs turned toward the source, Elder Jovak of the Primordians, the oldest living being on the ship, and possibly in this sector of the galaxy. The ancient creature's exoskeleton was faded with age, but the intelligence in its compound eyes remained sharp. Elder Jovak, Krilthax acknowledged with deep respect, we welcome your wisdom in this matter. The ancient Primordian slowly made its way to the center of the council chamber, its many legs clicking softly against the polished floor. I have lived long enough to see 17 species join the coalition, Jovak began, its voice carrying surprising strength. Each brings their own unique path to sentience. Some evolve through harmony, others through logic, still others through spiritual awakening. The elder paused, its compound eyes fixing on Marcus. But let us not forget that the Vraxion, now among our most disciplined members, spent their early evolutionary phases engaged in what they called creative destruction. The Zenithians, for all their philosophical refinement, once had a developmental stage where younglings would deliberately induce hallucinogenic states by licking certain fungi. A ripple of discomfort passed through the council. Nobody liked to be reminded of their species' less dignified evolutionary chapters. The humans, Jovak continued, appear to have maintained a connection to their primitive developmental phases that many of us have forgotten. Their younglings still engage in the chaotic exploration that allows for rapid adaptation and creative problem-solving. Marcus blinked in surprise. Was the ancient alien actually defending human birthday parties? Consider the memory human Fletcher shared, Elder Jovak said. It contained elements of social bonding, creative experimentation, adaptation to unexpected outcomes, and practical learning through trial and error, sometimes painful error. Yes, but effective nonetheless. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, but none dared interrupt the elder. Furthermore, Jovak added, I note that human Fletcher described these events with what humans call humor. Their cognitive mechanism for processing potentially traumatic events and extracting value from them. Most impressive. But Elder, Krilthax objected cautiously. Half our cultural exchange class is still under psychological observation. Because they have lost touch with their own species' developmental chaos, Jovak replied firmly. They have sanitized their histories, forgotten the messy, dangerous path that led to their current enlightenment. The ancient primordian turned to face the entire council. I propose that rather than censuring human Fletcher or questioning humanity's readiness for the coalition, we recognize that they bring a valuable perspective that many of us have lost, the ability to embrace chaos, to learn through direct, sometimes painful experience, and to emerge stronger for it. The council chamber fell silent as the members contemplated Elder Jovac's words. Finally, Thax spoke. Your wisdom gives us much to consider, Elder. Perhaps there is merit in the human approach, despite its alarming aspects. Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. Had his disastrous presentation actually turned into a diplomatic win? The resolution came 3 ship days later, after much deliberation among the council and considerable recovery time for the traumatized class members. Marcus was summoned to Ambassador Thax's private chambers, where he found the Xelborian diplomat and Elder Jovac waiting for him. Human Fletcher, Thax began, his skin a neutral shade of diplomatic professionalism. The council has reached a decision regarding your memorable cultural presentation. Marcus braced himself. While your childhood memory caused considerable distress among many representatives, but Elder Jovac has convinced us that this may reveal more about our own species' disconnection from our evolutionary roots than about any human deficiency. Thanks? Marcus ventured. Indeed, Elder Jovac clicked approvingly. The council has decided that rather than limit human cultural sharing, we should embrace it with certain precautions. Precautions? Marcus asked suspiciously. Thax's skin flushed a shade of bureaucratic satisfaction. We have created a new classification for human cultural presentations. Evolutionary chaos experiences. All future human cultural sharing will be clearly labeled with appropriate warnings, and attendance will be voluntary rather than mandatory. Additionally, the elder added, several delegations have expressed interest in learning more about these birthday parties and other human developmental rituals. They believe exposure to controlled chaos may help them reconnect with their species' more adaptable qualities. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. So my diplomatic disaster has turned into an educational opportunity? Precisely, Thax confirmed, his eye stalks bobbing in what Marcus had learned was affirmation. The Vrax Ion delegation has already requested a demonstration of this piñata ritual, though we have insisted on removing the blindfold element for safety reasons. And the Zenithian philosopher who began composing that lament, Marcus asked, has retitled it The Exhilarating Unpredictability of Human Development and reduced it to a more manageable 8,000 stanzas. Elder Jovac replied. There is one additional outcome, Thax added, his skin shifting to a shade of mild embarrassment. The Coalition's assessment committee has revised humanity's species profile. You are no longer classified as quaint primitive bipeds but have been upgraded to unpredictably adaptive sentience. That's actually pretty cool, Marcus admitted. Indeed, Elder Jovac agreed. And I have been authorized to inform you that your role aboard the Harmonious Exchange has been expanded. In addition to your maintenance duties, you are now officially designated as humanity's cultural ambassador. Marcus stared at the 2 aliens in disbelief. You want me to share more stories like that? On purpose? With appropriate warning labels, Thax emphasized. And perhaps a medical team on standby. Marcus grinned. Wait until they hear about summer camp. Elder Jovac's compound eyes gleamed with what might have been amusement. I believe the appropriate human expression is, this is going to be fun. For once, Marcus found himself in complete agreement with an alien assessment of human behavior. This was indeed going to be fun, chaotic, potentially disastrous, but definitely fun. And that, after all, was the most human experience of all.